exercise 2, it's a very sophisticated one. We start with a triangulation concept, involves flanking, and it could end up in a chi-square endgame or a min-square endgame. So it's quite technical, loads of details. Hopefully we cover most of them, and we try to be as precise as possible in our explanations. For the beginning, it's white to move. The triangulation that white will execute will be king to f4, king to f5. It's not winning for white if he tries to go king h4 and push the pawns. That branch, it's the most a draw for white. But let's go to our triangulation squares. Why isn't king f5 a good move? Once we push king to h6, obviously it's a mistake to check, and white attacks the weak pawn on e5, and you might think that it's a victory for white. Black plays king to g5, white takes, we take, and now where could white position, or where should white position his king? As we have an endgame similar to the previous one, with some differences. If white will go to e4, then we'll allow black to gain a move by check, and then if we go e4, check, e3, opposition, and then black has another check, and then we keep building up the black's pawn progression. e5, quite similar, will still be disturbed by a check, or he can jump straight, but let's say white will go for c5, just away from any kind of issues. f5, white pushes, and it's a race between the two pawns. White is converting first, but our pawn is in a weak position, and it's very unlikely that we manage to win this endgame unless hopefully we don't lose it. So that's why it doesn't work for white. King f5. So we start with king f4. Black can push his king, yeah, again, and then we move king to f5. Now g6 for black, you might think is a good move, but let's see. After we take, black takes, and we take opposition, it will be impossible for black to defend his pawn, so he's losing. That's why g6 is not an option. What can black play then? Should he withdraw his king? Probably the best option for black will be f6, but then we execute a flanking maneuver. Again, quite similar with the other scenario. We can't take on d5 now, because black will take on g4. We end up in the same pawn that become queen endgame. Now, would it be king to f7 the best move, or king to e7? What do you think? Let's go for king to f7. And if he takes, what are we going to play next? We take, he takes our pawn, we capture his pawn, and then our king will capture the black pawn. Go back. So king to f7, and black is not going to capture our pawn because we saw he's losing the endgame, and he will defend his own pawn. Now king to e7 for us. It's a very tricky waiting move. Black could try to push g6, then we take, he takes, but then if he does that, we take opposition again, and then there's no more good moves for black. Now, even if black goes for our pawn here, yeah, we don't necessarily have to take the pawn. We can just be patient. And if he takes, then we take, and then black won't be able to defend his pawn. Once black loses the d5 pawn, he's losing the key squares as well, which is very important for us to win. But let's say black will decide to push his pawn and exchange. Now, after we move king to d6, the only way for black to protect his pawn is stepping on the mine square. If you remember mine squares, in this layout of pawns, these are the two mine squares. So mine square for black and mine square for white. Once you step on this mine square first, you lose the endgame. Black is forced to step on the mine square, otherwise he's losing the pawn for free. And once he steps on the mine square, we step on the other one, and there's no way for black to protect his pawn. He's losing and he's losing the endgame. Now let's reset. Now black cannot afford to push g6 because he's losing the f pawn, and then there's no way he can defend the endgame. So that's why he has to go to g5. Once he goes to g5, we play king to f8, and now if black will take on g4, we take g, and he has to take on h5. Then he has no more protection over the f and d pawn, and then we win the endgame. So he cannot afford to capture on g4. Okay, now we have two options for black. He can come back on h6, or he can push g6. If he's pushing g6, the best move, the winning move, is king to g7, and there's no way for black now to keep up. If he's taking, we take, and again we take the f pawn, and therefore we take the d5. So black cannot take capture now. Yeah. If he is choosing to push, then he won't keep up with the pawn. If black decides to pull back to h6, we go to f7. Black has to take a position now, because otherwise he'll lose the g pawn. And once he takes a position, finally we manage to capture the d5 pawn, because the position of the black king is too far away from our g pawn, and win the endgame. A bit complicated, many branches. You might need to take some time, practice a couple of times, but hopefully this guidance of how to solve this endgame will enlighten you, and you guys will be able to play this against anybody and win the endgame.